Hello, this is Daryl here, sending love as always. Thank you for tuning in. I just want to say if you like this interview, you can check our website for companion workbooks, action guides, tools, checklists, templates, and show notes with links for everything mentioned on the call. Just visit bestbusinesscoach.ca. That's best, B-E-S-T, businesscoach.ca. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Daryl Urbanski, and welcome to the Best Business Podcast. My mission is to help create 200 new multi-millionaire business owners. How? You'll do better when you know better. In my interviews, you'll hear from self-made millionaires, seven-figure business owners, authors, and world-class experts sharing how they did it so you can too without experiencing the same obstacles they did. Now, if you like this interview, please share it with a friend you think will benefit. They'll appreciate it, and I will as well. You can also connect with me on social media. Look for Daryl Urbanski, D-A-R-Y-L, Urban Ski, U-R-B-A-N-S-K-I, and add me so we can be friends. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy what I've prepared for you right here, right now. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Daryl Urbanski, your host as always, and today I have a very, very, very special guest for you. In fact, this interview is pretty much dear to my heart. Today I'm interviewing, or going to be speaking with Dan Fagella, and the reason why this interview is important to me, and it's kind of a milestone thing as well, is Dan and I have known each other for a long time, a number of years now, and I remember when I first met him, we both went to this marketing seminar, and we were both kind of in there like on our last dime, kind of like, we got to make this work, like, you know, this is like, you know, we're in for a penny and for a pound, right? Like, I've got a loaf of bread and some peanut butter, and it's my meal for the next 3 days type thing, and man, we have both just come so far. So founder of Science of Skill and Micro BJJ, which is a training site for martial artists, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes, as well as CLV Boost, which is kind of a business and online marketing consultancy. Dan is just crushing it right now. He's doing extremely well with his businesses. He's obsessed to be the next kind of Tesla and change the world. And he's just, honestly, he's been, if you think about those races where they'd have the dogs chase the white rabbit, he's been my white rabbit because I never have known anyone that implements like this guy. And he's an awesome guy. He's an awesome friend, a super sharp marketer, takes amazing care of his clients, and to be able to go from where he was when I first met him to like both of us where we are now, like I just want to clarify for people that are listening to this, like, I mean, I've been to tons of seminars, tons of conferences, I've met hundreds and thousands of people, and I'm telling you, Dan is like in the 3% that's, you know, been able to rise with me to the top, so to speak. So it is very much an honor to have him on the call today. I think that if you got a pen and paper, get it handy because you're going to want to take some notes. Dan, thank you for joining me today. How you doing, buddy?
Oh man, I'm doing great now. I feel somewhat intimidated by the proceedings here, and now I got to live up to all this mumbo jumbo. So let's dive in, man. I do remember the old peanut butter and loaf of bread days. I remember
roof and ramen, right? That's what we used to say. Just roof and
as long as I got roof and ramen and I have a laptop, I'm good. You know, that was 5 years ago, right there. 6 years ago, I think.
Oh, man. It's been good, though. It's been a good ride. It's been a good journey. So
not bad at all.
You crazy bugger. All right, so how did you get started anyways? What were you doing before I met you, that fateful seminar, wherever we were?
Shucks. Well, in terms of what business, so we're doing a lot, obviously, CLV Boost is, you know, email marketing consultancy stuff, information products. Are you talking about the physical gym?
Yeah, I mean, how did you even get into being a business owner? I mean,
yeah, okay, so my transition to entrepreneurship, I want to say was somewhat similar to some other folks. Well, here's really how it went down. I like doing jiu-jitsu. You know, I was a 21-year-old guy, you know, training jiu-jitsu literally 7 days a week at multiple gyms, driving all over my little state of Rhode Island. And one of the gyms that I taught at, they were all really terrible businesses, like literally horrendous businesses. No sales, no retention, no anything that we'll probably talk about today. But they were nice folks, and they were people that are dear to me in my comeuppance in martial arts. And admittedly, they weren't business coaches, but they you know, one of the gyms went out of business, and I had been teaching for free for this guy for a year and a half because he doesn't make any you know, he wasn't making any money. So I was teaching for free just voluntarily. And what had happened was when the gym went under, he said, hey, well, you know, you can have the mats. I'll give you that much. I appreciate you being here. Thanks. And it was a really nice gesture by him. So I had these mats. I didn't know what to do with them. And my father ran a carpet store. And he said, well, if you can pay for the heating in the back warehouse, it's a pretty big warehouse, you can roll those mats out in the warehouse after 6 o'clock at night. And so long as you clean up after yourselves, you pay the heating bill and the light, I'll let you run the gym out of the back of the thing. And I was like, okay. And then I got into grad school at University of Pennsylvania, and I got the bill for what it was going to cost. And I realized I had to make it a real business. And then very quickly came the 100-hour weeks, and I've been on it ever since.
Yeah, no, you definitely know how to grind, man. That's awesome. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you kind of went through in that process? I mean, I know because we've been doing calls forever and kind of kicking each other in the butt, but what have been some of the biggest challenges for you when you...
Yeah. And just generally in coming up in the business domain, some of the biggest ones for me, I mean, initially it was, a lot of the marketing stuff that I guess I sort of had to focus on big time. So really, and you're familiar with this. I mean, my town is 8,000 people, in Wakefield, Rhode Island. So generating leads, as I now refer to it, was sort of a scrappy, odd task in a really little town. It was, it wasn't exactly like, hey, if you're on page 1 or 2 in Google, they're coming in every day. It was like, man, you could be on number 1 for Wakefield, Rhode Island, and shucks, I mean, half your opt-ins are going to be from places where they can't even, they're too far away to drive realistically and actually be stay around members. So really, one major component for me was the procedures of follow-up and of marketing. Initially I would just go on college campuses and just talk to random people about UFC, and then just let them know that we had a free class they could come down, and then they'd show up and we'd beat the crap out of them, and that's how we used to have their first class, and then we'd take them into some crazy room and present them with some basic programs. But yeah, initially it was a lot of the fundamentals of marketing. How do I get new people to kind of the website? And then once they're there, once they've been in touch once, how do I maintain some degree of contact with these folks and make sure we don't lose them? Because in my town, Urban, it's not necessarily just how many humans you can get, because you actually run out of them. There's only 8,000, and they're certainly not all in the ballpark for hitting the bag and choking each other. So it's really about how do you follow up with them. So ultimately, for me, not only getting them to the door, but really staying in touch with a base of leads was kind of the initial struggle that I was forced to yank myself through in order to kind of pay for graduate school.
Got it. Yeah, that's definitely, I know what you mean, because myself as well, obviously I have more people than 8,000, but I mean, I think that's probably attributed to your success. I mean, because both of us were in so deep or so committed, I guess, instead of just interested, and having to fight hard. I think that's really where, I know for myself, I feel that's the same thing. Like when I first kind of helped generate my first million for a client, that was after, I just was so shocked because I didn't do anything different than I was doing in my martial arts school, but the only thing was I was in a town of 100,000 people, and now, you know what I mean? And I was selling like a brick and mortar, like something, like limited geographically and, and all that. Now I'm selling something international, worldwide, and it's just the infrastructure is the same. So that was
with a gargantuan email list, where you can actually really truck in the bucks.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time it is the same lessons. The same thing for me, man. I mean, I jest, on Mixergy and the other interview shows that I developed a little bit of a neuroses around follow-up and around consistency of follow-up. And it was actually you, Daryl, believe it or not, and this is, a little bit random, but it was you who once said, and this is probably 4 years ago, you said something like, because we're Infusionsoft users pretty early on. You and I were Infusionsoft users well before we could afford Infusionsoft. Well before we could afford Infusionsoft by any rational means. And I remember you saying at one point, we're database marketers. That's what we do. We're database marketers. And that had dawned on me. I mean, that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But But yeah, I mean, I developed a real neuroses around how do I rotate relevant messages to different segments of this list to keep the relationship and also flag interest so that I can call them, I can generate sales, I can generate clicks, I can do what I need to do and really maximize this list of folks. Not just really good automated messaging, but consistently picking those little money pockets, so to speak, of leads or past customers or folks that have booked appointments but never showed up, etc., and be able to consistently mine them. So, that neurotic tendency of a database marketer and a marketing automation guy ended up translating to a significantly grander extent in both my online info businesses and with the folks that we're doing that kind of email marketing consulting work with, whether it's a software company that's at $1 million run rate, that's something you can kind of really scale up with that same neuroses that only would have gotten me so far in a town of 8,000 people. So yeah, I think the scramble had some meaning to it, and that's, if I have no other solace than that, Urban, that's what I got.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, and that's what they say, the money's in the list, the money's in the relationships that you already have, and that's a really, really, really important point. I'm glad you brought that up for everyone that's listening, because that's exactly it. I mean, the money is in the follow-up, and you hit it. It's the same principles, just multiplied, so that's awesome. What else was kind of a big aha for you, or what really helped in your development, in your career? This is random, but have you broken through 6 figures a month yet? Because I know that's been like you're on that, like a mission for that. Is that?
Jeez. No, not in the info business, and even when we had sort of, at least at the time of this recording, our best sort of all together month, both between the consulting business, the info business, and sort of the payments for the brick and mortar deal, is still like in the 75-ish range, so, or probably 72-ish range. But I'm getting there, Urban. I'm getting there.
Yeah, no, I know, because you're like, I remember we had a call and you were like, you're like, come hell or high water, I'm gonna get I'm gonna get 7 figures for this business. I'm gonna, yeah. So no, man, I'm rooting for you. We'll get you there.
So yeah, you had asked what else was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
For me initially, and I became, and I guess, same thing with follow-up, became pretty obsessed with this afterwards. But initially it was, who do I find and model for this thing? So initially, like most of us starting a business, who do we know that runs a business? I don't know, maybe a parent, maybe a, I don't know, like for me, I knew a couple guys that ran martial arts gyms. Now they were both, they both treated me well, and they were nice enough folks, and they've taught me numerous life lessons and potentially techniques and things like that. But shucks, looking at what they were doing for business, that's really what my autopilot went into. What I was around. I wasn't an active learner in terms of business. It's funny because you go to a martial arts gym, you want to learn from a black belt, you want to learn from somebody who's really experienced, but then in business we just think that we just sort of go by assumptions and by what it seems like is going on. And so finding people to model was initially very important for me. And that happened initially running a martial arts gym and being able to do that. But then, also just so many other domains and individual facets of business, paying for consulting with really high level marketing automation consultants, paying for consulting with really high level info marketers or Facebook pay-per-click folks, and really figuring out who's the best at this. So initially that was a martial arts gym, and I had to figure out who's the best at this and then pay them. And to be frank, I mean, every mentor is different, and you have different experiences with different mentors. But I will say, just that principle, that concept, and being attached to people early on who were legitimately successful, at least monetarily, in the domain in which I was focused, was huge. I think most folks that are probably tuned into this call, I know people, and it sounds crazy to me now because I would never do it, but I know people who are running, decently successful e-commerce businesses who don't know anybody more successful than them and don't regularly talk to anybody more successful than them in e-commerce. Yep. I know folks that are, running martial arts gyms that have never really talked to anybody who has a 7-figure martial arts gym, never mind a martial arts gym that's making a dime more than theirs. Yeah. And to me, it's absolute insanity. So initially it was just latching on to somebody who had done it, because I realized, man, I'm paying good money to get great private lessons under Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu masters here. But then I'm unconsciously doing what my very bad mentors, business wise, were doing in terms of business and translating that over to find excellence and just latch onto it and find the fundamentals, pay them, do whatever you got to do to find them. And I'm a believer in that. So initially it was scrambling to find those people, and then it was just doing whatever they said.
Yeah. And I remember when you first, when we were first had a conversation about this, and you said you did you're like, yeah, I did my black Lamborghini test, and and I'm having a hard time finding anyone that passes muster. And I'm like, what black Lamborghini test? You're like, yeah. So you take all your competitors and you put them out on their kitchen table, and then you take a look at these and you consider which one of these guys can reasonably walk into a car dealership and just get a black Lamborghini as is right now, or sign up and be able to afford the payments.
Yep.
And you're like, and that eliminates 99.9% of the people.
Yep.
And whoever's left, those are the ones that you look to model. And
you just pay attention to them.
Yeah. It's just so crazy, that you just
pay attention to them.
And this is an interesting point, and I like this because this is something that I think is really important because. I never went to university, and so I always felt I had to, self-educate myself at a high pace to keep up, because you feel like, I didn't go to formal education, I got to keep up. But and I know that this is kind of it's counterintuitive to, I think, what most people think is common sense. But if I'm in school and I have some sort of assignment due, and I hand in something that matches yours identically, I'm going to get expelled potentially.
Oh yeah, they're going to expel you big time.
But you know what's the craziest thing is, if I go buy a McDonald's franchise, I go pay them a couple of $1 million, and they invite me over and they go, hey, all right, now do exactly like I do. And when you go to a martial arts gym or something, you pay them some money and they go, okay, now do exactly what I do. You know what I mean? And it's just the funniest thing that I think that. And so even here we're talking about the black Lamborghini test, and that's what you're saying. You're saying find someone who, and this is another point that I want to make, is people so often take advice, never take advice from someone whose shoes you don't want to trade. And I just had a friend. I had a friend. He's doing about 180 to 250,000 a month, and he had some guy. He had these two guys in his office, and he's just such a nice, humble guy. But you could tell upset him because he was talking to me about it, and they were lecturing him about reason why he doesn't have a $50 million business is because he hasn't tapped into his why. Meanwhile, the one guy isn't even, his wife is paying all the bills because he's trying to, get some position at a company that will eventually turn into something, and it's the same thing. And he just sat there, and he's so nice. And I had to tell him, I was like, man, I would have been very patient, but I would have been very firm at some point. But I'm sorry, but my patience isn't warranted. We really need to change the topic because, anyways, I don't want to go on a rant,
I'm with you. I'm with you all day. And I think, Daryl, I'll play right off of that. There's, if you're getting advice, I was getting, I was having some folks, tell me kind of, what I should change about the flyers for my martial arts gym. And, some of them were, these were guys that were sort of going broke doing martial. So you can't pay attention there. You gotta, and you can model different people for different reasons. So I have certain mentors, who I wish no harm upon. I wish harm upon very few living folks, but whom I would maybe model for business things, but maybe not for other things. And now, if I want to model, let's say, prudence, I might read Plutarch, and if I want to model courage, I might read, Alexander. I can glean different things from different people. And the same thing for business. If you got somebody that's really sharp with marketing, they have proven results all over the place. Success leaves clues. That's Tony Robbins, and ultimately, if you're tuned into this call and you're working on a particular initiative in your business with paid traffic, who's done something just like that for someone like that and seen a lot of success? Make a list and get a hold of those people. Or just in terms of your business in general, what's the business model and who've been the most successful people at it or something like it, and then just line them up. I think that's absolutely invaluable. And probably, the only reason I didn't go broke when I went online is because I started tuning into folks that were making a lot of money doing kind of membership-oriented programs and information marketing. So, that's if there's any nugget kind of on my end that I think translates to any business, it's really that.
No, I am so on board with that. Yeah. So this is, and again, this is why I was telling people, if you got a pen and paper handy, you want to grab it, because you're going to want to listen to this call again and again and take notes, because I mean, this is real. I mean, this is, if you're trying to be successful, if you're struggling, if you've hit some plateau and you need to break through, I mean, that's what I love, and that's one of the things I feel like I really got from martial arts is, I never became world champion. That wasn't necessarily my goal, but what I really did learn about is the importance of a short cycle feedback loop, and the importance of every day getting up and trying to improve yourself, and the importance of having someone that can kick you in the butt and point you in the right direction, and and just refine what you're doing, and just practice little things. Perfect example, I've been doing CrossFit tonight. Tonight I was going to rest, but I decided, I'm going to go in anyways, and all I was doing was practicing really basic form. I just wanted to go in, break a sweat, making sure that next time I go in and I go hard, that I've just done really basic things that people might not think would to work on. But I was like, instead of doing nothing and being lazy, I'm still going to keep the habit, keep the schedule. I'm going to go talk to my coach, have him coach me on the little things, the little details, and just drill it a little bit. That way when I go back, I know I'm less likely to hurt myself because my form's better, all that sort of stuff. But no, I think this is really, really, really good stuff that we've given down. So, Dan, what have been some of the habits that you've had aside from modeling success, which is, I think, gets drilled out of people to some certain extent? We all want to be creative and create something new.
Yeah.
What like personal habits do you feel? And you have you're very, very astute in the world of mastery, and again, you've got science of skill. That's where you've been studying what it takes to be successful. So, what sort of personal habits do you feel have really contributed to your success?
Yeah, well, there's a few. I mean, it's tough to say. I think different people have different ones, and I think different opinions are great. I can speak to what I feel as though have been the greatest conduits for me. There's been a few, so I'll go into the technical, and then I'll go a little bit into kind of more the ideal for a second. For the technical, for the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years, I've kept very rigorously, for probably the last 4 years, I've kept maybe less rigorously, but the last 2 or 3 years I kept rather rigorously a key progress indicator across different domains. So I have certain activities, or I have certain rotations that I'll go through, or tasks that I'll accomplish on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, and on a quarterly basis. And I have a few things I'll do annually as well. And I have this in an Excel doc that's on my main kind of computer screen here. And every week I will, now I actually do it with my girlfriend, but I used to just do it by myself every Sunday, sit down, process through, did I hit my dailies every single day? And for me, that's writing down my affirmations. So one thing that I'm a firm believer in this, and this is a little bit Napoleon Hill, but as much as I'm not dogmatic about anybody's advice, and Napoleon Hill is no example. I mean, is no exception. But I am a pretty firm believer in writing down your deepest and furthest goals in a tangible format on a daily basis. And so that's one of my dailies. But then also, for weekly, so for example, for me, things that I've jotted down on my weekly checklist are things that I know, from a mastery perspective might be, important for me. So, like if I zing myself through here, I have every single week I have a section where I have to work 4 hours straight on only one task and literally take no break. So I can get a drink of water or something, have it next to me, but I just focus on a single individual task for 4 hours with no breaks in my focus. And one reason I do that every week is simply because I believe in cultivating focus. And I think that it's very easy for us to be checking the Facebook little red tab or the cell phone or zipping between 50 different tasks and possibly lose constancy, lose endurance of our actual focus and adherence and reining in of our focus and our concentration. And so that's something I do every single week is I'll pick a different task, normally, potentially on Saturday or later on in the week, like on a Friday in the afternoon, just have 1 4-hour block in Google Calendar, just nail it. And then I have a number of other tasks that I'll dig into every single week, and then the same thing with every single month, and I'll have to check through those. Some of those are business, such as, look through the QuickBooks, clean the stuff up, make sure it's solid, get back to the bookkeeper, just really polishing all that up. And then some of it is personal. So on a quarterly, one of the important tasks that I have is I have a list of mentors. It's not gargantuan, It's a list of mentors and friends that I want to make sure I rotate conversation with and communication with and stay in touch with. Some of those folks are people that mean a lot to me. Some of them are people that I know I can glean some great advice from and hopefully be useful to them as well. And I just know that if I didn't have that on a quarterly, I might go a year and a half without talking to some of these folks. Right. And that would be terrible. So a KPI has been really kind of cornerstone to a lot of what I've been up to in the last, 2 or 3 years or so. And in addition to that, what I like to do in the morning after writing affirmations is go through sort of what the entirety of the day is going to look like, jot down my priorities. A lot of the time, a decent amount of that is in Google Cal already, and just see the day playing out in sort of its ideal form. Now, things are always going to come up and things are always going to interrupt what we'd really like an ideal day to look like. But if I know what I want to be able to stick a fork in by the time the day is dead, I want to line those things right up in the early morning. Otherwise, you get dragged into whatever ancillary topic gets yanked onto your desk. Yep. So that's large. And then on a weekly, one of the weekly boxes that I check on my KPI is, and I got this from Robbins as well, is 3 primary goals. So there's 400 things every week I wish I could do. Urban, if there was cloning, I would have done it so many times that my population would be grander than all humans by a vast, vast margin. A vast, vast margin, I tell you. And or replicated myself digitally. I mean, I would have, it would have been done. I would have done it. But I can't. It's super unfortunate. But such is the human condition. So I jot down of everything I'm working on, multiple businesses, trying to sell businesses, moving forward with important clients, big picture transitions, hires and fires or whatever the case may be, of everything that could potentially happen if the hellstorms are released. And I can do nothing but 3 things in an entire week. What are those 3 things? I write those down every single Sunday, and I think hard, looking across my time horizons about what those 3 ought to be. They are not set on a whim. They are set by deeply rooted and grounded in what the hell I care about, and when what should get done. And that's Robbins. Robbins was 3 a week. I forget the name of that program. I didn't pick everything and follow. Again, I'm not so much of a dogmatic follower, at least in some respects, but that happened to stick with me. So in terms of tangible habits, those have been big for me. And I think anybody, literally anybody, can or should have a KPI. If they think about their ideal self, what would your ideal self do every week? I think the question people can ask themselves to try to learn from, this little ranting man who's talking to them right now. Your ideal self does something every week. What are those things, for your business or personal life? And then your ideal self does something every month. What are those things in your ideal life? And I happen to know what they are for me, and I've defined them, and I try to live to that ideal. I try to fit that frame. I do this stuff every single day. I do these things every single week. I do these things. If you were going to fit the frame of your own personal ideal, I think it could oft be distilled into tangible, measurable somethings, which we could track. And even if it's only 4 of them, I've had, my initial KPIs were rather small, like 2 things daily, 2 other things weekly, and a monthly and a quarterly, but I smash them, and that was sort of the adherence I'd give to myself. So that's one on sort of the practical side. If you would, Urban, I'd even like to get a little inspirational, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, no, that's by all means. I'm on. Yeah, I'm with you. This is all really good stuff. I've got a couple of things I want to say once you're done, but man, it's all yours. Keep going. All right.
I'll rock and roll here. One that's been awful meaningful for me here, and I shared this on Entrepreneur on Fire, and I don't happen to relate. Like there aren't as many people to talk about these things with as with some of the tangible business stuff. But for me, I believe that this is as if not more important potentially. Is that ultimately as an entrepreneur, I believe that depending on sort of where you want to get to, it's going to involve a whole bunch and marshaling a number of different resources, probably more than your current circumstances require, because our present circumstances, if you're listening to a podcast, you're likely in a relatively comfortable first world country where the odds are, even if you decided never to work and your main objective was getting overweight and I don't know, winning in some kind of online video game, you'd actually still be just fine. In other words, you wouldn't die. Like the government wouldn't come kill you, other people wouldn't hurt you, animals wouldn't eat you. You'd have a refrigerator. You'd have enough money to go to vacation. I mean, it's just not that hard.
Right.
So in order to marshal forth and pull forth more from ourselves, I believe that it really requires a change in perspective. And so for me, history and biography has been a grand influence on a number of different domains of my life. So, for example, if the highest achievers that you know of really aren't that vast in their actual achievements, I believe that this poses problems to our own human potential. For example, if the hardest working people we know work 50 or 60 hours a week, we are in trouble. If the bravest people we know, sell cars or something, we are in trouble. I believe that if you want to tap into deep resources in yourself, you have to look to the real exemplars of virtue, the real exemplars of self-overcoming. Reading of folks like Alexander or of Napoleon or of Abraham Lincoln or of Washington and other folks along those lines, I think it's just very, very important for us to downplay in our own mind what we consider to be hard work, Daryl, what we consider to be difficult, what we consider to be hardship, because it is paltry, because it is nominal, because it is really a sin to our human potential. People who believe that getting up early is hard, it is not hard. Like Washington had, his father die and his older brother die. He's like 19 years old running a big old manor all by himself and going off to war and, killing people with guns and bayonets when he's, 20, 21 years old, and running this gargantuan farm at the same time. And that's, responsibility wise, just astronomically higher than what we'll ever necessarily deal with. But we have these odd feelings that there's these real limitations, that hard work really is bounded by our current mental references of who we think works hard. And hardship is bounded by the dimensions of what we think hardship actually is. But you read about, Marcus Aurelius, having his entire empire, swept through with plague, his head of the army taking over Rome when he's gone, and defecting against him and literally slogging through the marshes of Germania by himself, his wife and his children dying from illness around him, but daily fighting barbarians in the woods. Like, we are boys. We are children. We are, as Emerson would say, parlor soldiers. We are parlor soldiers. We're children. And so I believe that those references of hardship, of hard work, and of persistence, references vastly beyond our present current notions thereof, are literally requirements of extracting the most from ourselves, are literally requirements of becoming anything close to an ideal beyond ourselves. And so for me, that's vastly important. I relate nothing to anyone who considers getting up early difficult. I relate nothing to anyone who considers, going bankrupt to be hardship. Ford went bankrupt a bunch of times. Aurelius had a bunch of his kids die. Napoleon had to kill people with bayonets and then was, sent off to Elba and then took over France again with a handful of men crossing the Alps solo dolo, sleeping 3 hours a night until he reached the Tuileries and then ran France again. We're just boys, and we need to realize that and essentially, without necessarily genderizing this thing, the colloquial term would be man up, but I don't really feel like offending anyone.
No. I get it.
So Joan of Arc was not a man, but Joan of Arc was manly in the sense that I think it's freaking important. And so from an ideal perspective, again, check your perceptions. Check your perception. I have nothing more important than that from a sort of non-tactical domain, from an inspirational domain. Nothing better than that. And there's no business book that's been better than the biography of Bonaparte, in my personal opinion, and the effect on my life.
No, I think that's really
important.
important.
A little far out. Apologize.
No, not at all. Because I think it's important because, exactly, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And like you just said,
they're probably all boys.
Well, and that's exactly it. If your highest, if in your network of people, the highest accomplishment you have is becoming manager of the local McDonald's, you got to find new people to inspire you. And you're right. I mean, look, if you look at any Olympic athlete, you are just astounded by what we're able to accomplish. If you just even try, any of us try to do what they do, I mean, it's laughable because we don't have that background, that preparation, we haven't done that work. But I think what you're trying to say is that I think if you read enough biographies of these people that have done phenomenal things in their time, it makes you realize that, actually they're just flesh and blood like we are. And the only difference is mindset, ego, and really, like you said, perseverance and the goal and determination to accomplish that. And I think you're right. I think hands down, you're right. I think it's really, really important. That's why you and I have been, and why we talk as much as we do, because you need to have other people. You can't relate to people who have nothing in common. Like if what's the one expression? If you hung around with 9 crackheads, even if you never decided to do crack, you're still going to have crackhead problems because they're going to bring it into your life.
No ifs, ands, or buts. No
exactly.
Ifs, ands, or buts.
So, and that's the exact same thing. And it's not a classist thing. It's not a socialist thing. It's not a prejudice thing. It's just, I'm trying to be this kind of person, and exactly that. If I'm training to win the world championships, then I got to be focused. And I love that you said that you take 4 hours, one day a week, 4 hours just to work on that. I'm reading a book called The Power of Will by Frank Haddock, and he talks about that. And just regular, like, willpower is a muscle that you can train, just like focus, just like anything, and you need it. Yeah, and and even when you talked about your KPI, I loved how you just, you didn't start with like 70 of them. You started with two daily, 2 weekly, and you smashed it. And that built the habit that you could then stack and build upon.
This is true.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, who would you recommend? You said Napoleon Bonaparte.
Okay, I like Bonaparte. Now, and again, remember, so let me just hearken to something. A lot of the time when you talk about Bonaparte, people be like, oh, you must love war, Daniel. Surely you're a fan of war. Surely you'd like to be a conqueror. That's so vastly far from the point. It's absolutely obscene. What I happen to like of Bonaparte, so biographies I'd recommend. Plutarch's Life of Brutus. This is the Brutus many of you will know of, even people who are not history buffs are familiar with, Et tu, Brute. Brutus, painted and deeply looked at from a historical perspective, actually a rather good man, at least in Plutarch's mind, and in my opinion, a very good example of dedication of a life lived to ideals in many respects. Not necessarily the only bio out there. I just happen to like him amongst Plutarch's other lives. So Plutarch's Brutus. You can Google it, sound it out, call it a day. And I also like Vincent Cronin's Bonaparte is one that I'm reading now, which I happen to like very much. Just because Vincent Cronin's Bonaparte. I mean, I'll just make this clear, Urban. I mean, somebody that everybody will relate to is Bonaparte because he's so well known. Very few people know very much about Bonaparte. But just in terms of, remember I talked about before, what is hardship and what is hard work. You read about Bonaparte and you just want to cry and beat the past versions of yourself that had any notion of these things being difficult. This is a guy who'd lose 20,000 men, in a day against the Russians and get stabbed in the leg by a bayonet and then have to write, constitutions the next day and then oscillate in that pattern 3 months by 3 months, living on the battlefield, absolutely, dominating therein, outside of Waterloo and a couple other rare exceptions, and then being such a vast and great, again, I'm not going to speak explicitly to Napoleon's intentions. I don't model Napoleon for everything. Mm-hmm. I don't model Brutus for everything. I don't model Abe Lincoln for everything. I don't model. I select what I'd like to select. The things I select from Bonaparte, and the reason I think people would like to read of Bonaparte is because Bonaparte exemplifies an entirely different definition of what setting high goals is, an entirely definition of what overcoming hardship is, an entirely different definition of what actual hard work is, and will, if read properly, I think, crack holes in the skull in a very good way of destroying those notions, which to us today, in my personal perspective, are those of boys. And so Bonaparte and Plutarch's Life of Brutus, to make things short.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. I really, really, really value and appreciate that. And I know you feel you maybe went on a rant, but again, for those that are listening, it's really important. And you might not be, like you say, you don't really rely on any one mentor, but I am a huge fan of Think and Grow Rich. And that's just a mental mastermind to read the biographies of people and to have them be your peers and to think and ask them even in your mind, what would they do? How would they, right? And exactly to compare your
Yeah.
life to theirs. You're crying about some little problem that you're having. Oh, your finances aren't that great. Oh, poor you. And then you think about the story of these people that you've read and realize that in comparison, what you exactly said, like you're just a little child crying over nothing.
Yeah, just a boy.
Pick
Just
yourself
a
up
boy.
by your bootstraps, go back out there and fix it. And the reality is that we only have one life, and so why waste it?
All
That's the
day
big
long.
thing. I mean,
All day long. There's urgency around that for sure.
yeah, I mean, none of us know. I've had 10 people pass in the last 14, 15 months, and it's just none of us know any age. Just get up, shut the TV off, and get up and go make something of your life and make something of future generations. So that's awesome. No, thank you for sharing that.
Of course, brother. It means a ton, man. Absolutely changed my life in so many ways. And you're right on Napoleon Hill. Obviously, a not a history buff for the sake of being so, but one who was inspired by heroes. And
Yeah,
I
I
think, can't we all be? Can't we all be?
I know. Well, I just love the tenets. I think that they're just if you just follow those and focus, that just definitely gets you started in the right direction. And I really like what you talked about with the habits, about having the routine. And I have the same thing. We just talked about that before the call. I've got a routine I'm loving now. I mean, I'm asleep. I'm trying to be asleep by 10 p.m. I'm waking up every morning with intent at 5:30 to 6 a.m. And I wake up, I eat, I meditate for 40 minutes, and then I go and I work out. I do CrossFit. I come home, I shower and change, and I do this thing called the 5-minute journal, where every day you write down 3 things you're grateful for, your 3 goals for the day, and a daily affirmation. And so by 8:30 a.m., I've worked out, I've meditated, I've eaten, and I've written down my 3 priorities for the day. All I need to do is make sure I eat a couple more meals, and all my day is, we talk about focus, is focusing on those 3 priorities.
Yep.
And that's just it's waking up with intent. It's imposing your will on your day and your life versus having things just happen to you. Jim
Yep.
Rohn used to say, never begin your day until you finished it on paper. And I think that that's so important. Voltaire said, a plan means nothing, but planning is everything. And I think that that's really important. And that goes back to your your KPIs, key progress indicators, your daily, weekly, quarterly, annual, just check mark. If you're driving and you don't have any destination, how do you know when you're going to get there? Talking to a friend and client, she was planning a promotion for Black Friday, and we were talking about it. I was like, well, how much money do you want to make? And she was like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, what would you like to make? And she came up with a number, and then we just did some, just backed it out and did some planning and realized that with the plan she had and the people she was going to market to, there's no way she was going to hit that goal. And so it was like, geez, if you just begin with the end in mind, how powerful that can be. So again, there's just a lot of wisdom in this. For those of you listening, please listen to this a couple of times. Get those gems down. I mean, the worst thing, my real frustration is I got people that pay me thousands of dollars for my advice, and then I give free advice to people, and they never do anything with it. Please don't be that person. Take some notes, make some changes, and do something with this. So, because it's good stuff. One more question, really, I
Yeah.
guess, is Dan, what do you think, if anything, ever in your career was holding you back?
Ah, shucks. Well, I like to think I've sort of chucked all the chips in here. Things that have held me back. Things that have held me back. Let me try to get to an example, maybe, of something. I don't think I had any pervasive beliefs that sort of bounded my success. I mean, certainly lack of somebody to model. Lack of somebody to model might have been a good one. But also, and especially initially, this is probably amongst other problems. This wasn't like the pervasive problem that burdened my existence. But this is one that I think every entrepreneur most likely learns, is that sales is actually a process and a real skill. It's not something that happens randomly when you ask people about stuff. And my initial experience in running a martial arts gym and seeing how martial arts gym was done was, hey, I mean, you had some prices. I guess you told some people about them. And maybe when you got them on the phone, maybe they decided to come into your gym. But that there were actual ways that you could, present what your actual value proposition was. There was ways that you could speak in a language of what people actually care about, and there's ways that you could guide a conversation in a way where you could present its benefits and give somebody a decent shot of getting in on it if it's something they're legitimately interested in, as opposed to just kind of rattling away in whatever sort of comes to the top of your mind at that random point, which is probably disassociated from what other people care about. So learning that sales was a process was definitely an initial barrier. I would have never moved out of the back of a carpet store if I didn't graduate in terms of that skill set. So that was a big one for me, and it's luckily carried forward to consulting and everything else. But in the beginning, man, that was a big puzzle until I learned that it was a system and a process and a skill that had to be ground out. So that was its own little hurdle in the beginning, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a great. You're right. That's the quintessential skill, I think, of any business. I mean, business. What was it? We all work for sales, quote unquote. Nothing happens until the sale is made. So and sales. It's not about manipulating people in a negative way in any way, shape, or form. It's about helping people realize what the action that they need to take to get the results that they want. I'm a firm believer that problems are markets, not demographics or psychographics. And those things lead you to people with a particular problem, but it's actually the problem that's the market. And that's my personal opinion on why the newspaper industry was decimated, is they forgot the problem that they were solving originally, and they thought they were just delivering wads of advertising to people with content mixed in there, versus actually delivering information to people that they cared and wanted in a way that was palatable for them. So I really think that by focusing on the problem, that's an easy way to give longevity to your business. And anyways, I think just sales is about helping people identify the problem, recognize it as a problem, and just walk through look, because we're all scared to part with money. I think, say the two most difficult things to do with someone in human interaction, and I'm painting with broad strokes here, but the two most difficult things to get to do with another human is, one, get them to have sex with you, and two, is to get them to give you money. They require the highest degree of trust, faith, and confidence, and so it's scary.
Those are toughies, man. Yeah, I definitely. Those were both hard in college, I'll tell you what. Jeez.
But I mean, it's just true. And so people are afraid. That's a vulnerable thing. Money represents time, energy, it represents a lot of things. And so to part with it, someone needs to just recognize the problem they have, and then, and then you've got to walk them through that. And that's where proof is a big part of any sales process, because people really want to see the proof and the demonstration that it works, so that way they feel secure and confident in it. And I think that that's a big part of it as well. So, no, good feedback. This has been a great call, Dan. So what are you doing now, and what are you excited about?
Yeah, well, right now, I mean, some of the work that I'm souped up to be involved in is with CLV Boost, which is the email marketing and marketing automation consultancy that we work with, where I moved up here to Boston. I'm literally working on the MIT campus every single day in a building called the Cambridge Innovation Center, and getting to work with some cool venture-backed companies and software companies and folks, in the multi-million-dollar run rate domain, really optimizing email campaigns and automating email campaigns. Again, like you had mentioned, the same little neurotic skills that had to be developed in the small town, but really scaling those up and getting to test them, that's been a tremendous amount of fun as of late, and being able to apply those skills on sort of a bigger level. So in terms of what I'm souped up about, it's kind of delving more into that world. And then also, I'm doing a lot of speaking these days with TED Talks and Ivy League schools on sort of emerging technology and ethics as well. But business-wise, it's that nerdy email stuff and applying it to businesses that need stuff automated. That's sort of been what's taken up my mind share as of late.
Yeah, no, and it's an awesome skill. It is such an awesome skill, being able to craft messages, send them out, and collect money.
Yeah, there's something to be said of that, man. I got hooked on that pretty quick once I realized.
I know, and I remember we had a call once. We felt it was petty and beneath you, and I was like, man, I don't know. That's a great thing to be able to fall back on. I just
Yeah, I mean, I hope to cultivate some grander skills. Again, reading too much biography, I sort of start to idolize some additional skills. But yes, in terms of a saleable one and one that folks are willing to pay me for, that's pretty high up there, getting those click-through rates and those e-commerce purchases up. So working with venture-backed folks and exciting companies in that domain has again, as I had mentioned, that's what I'm souped up about in the coming months here.
That's awesome. So if anyone here from the call wants to get in touch with you, reach out, get some more information, what are the best ways for them to get in contact with you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, today I know a lot of my interviews are focused almost exclusively around email marketing and marketing automation. If people want to find, how I grew and sold my first martial arts gym, or grew the information marketing business in the martial arts niche to $50,000 a month. That's at clvboost.com. That's sort of the main consultancy. You can download the white paper with a lot of our basic strategies on both database and marketing automation for email, and concepts that we've applied to consulting businesses, software businesses, you name it. And so some of the coolest stuff is there, but that's also a web form where you can reach out to me personally as well. And if folks just want to, reach out and ping a question around Plutarch, books, email, whatever, Dan at CLVBoost is my direct email as well. And of course, being on Mr. Urbanski's podcast, I gotta throw out the personal contact. Make sure you let me know that you came from here, though. Then I'll be I'll be more than receptive. So those are the best ways. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me. Again, CLV Boost. That's where most of the email marketing automation work is getting done, and you can learn about us there.
That's right. That's right. So make sure you tell Dan that I sent you. He owes me a Rhode Island rat, and I never actually got that.
One of these days.
Anyways, Dan, I appreciate you so much, man. It has just been such an enriching experience just to grow with you and just to witness your growth. And it's just awesome because we're both still young, have so much more to do, and so many more people to help. And I just thank you for your time tonight. And just thank you for being awesome, for being an inspiration, a friend and a consultant, and for your time today.
Thanks so much, Urban. It's been cool being able to catch up formally with you here.
Yeah. You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better. And your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. Reach out and interact. Reach out and interact. Reach out and interact.